Hello everyone, hope you're all well today. The purpose of this video is to give you some information about Bright Coaching and the Professional Diploma in Coaching and Behavioural Change for Safe Driving. So if this is your first time here, my name is Stuart Lochray, I'm the founder of Bright Coaching. Thanks for checking out the channel. Bright Coaching is a training company for driving instructors. We provide driving instructor training solutions. The reason I founded Bright Coaching was that I just felt there was a bit of a gap in the market for kind of serious CPD for driving instructors. So much of the offerings around CPD in this industry centre around things like the standards check and passing the part 3, which are important, and we do offer that kind of training, advice on passing these tests. But if we think of ourselves as professionals, then we should be given a little bit more, in my opinion, we should be given a little bit more thought and consideration to our development in terms of progression in the industry, providing a better service, a better environment for our clients, as opposed to just focusing on training courses that are going to help us to keep our badge and keep us achieving that kind of minimum standard, to borrow a phrase, that the DVSA sets for us. So born a little bit out of frustration about not the training that's out there, because a lot of that training is very good, but born out of a frustration that was all that existed to a certain extent. Now, obviously there are exceptions, and I'm generalising a little bit, but that was just the way I felt when I kind of came up with the idea that we needed to do something. We needed another, hardcore, heavy-duty piece of CPD that required real study from driving instructors, that really pushed driving instructors to go out their comfort zone and do some real hard work and real development around coaching, becoming advanced coaches, but also learning new knowledge and practicing new skills that, in my opinion, should form part of our basic training, but don't. Things around behavioural change techniques and driver psychology that Lisa Dorn has done a lot of great work with, and Elizabeth Box, who was involved in the vetting of the qualification. So that was important to me. That's kind of the concept there. In terms of how I wanted to structure it, borrowed heavily from the Tri-Coaching Partnership BTEC Level 4 in Coaching for Driver Development, which was a qualification I did many years ago. I went on to deliver that course for Tri-Coaching. Tri-Coaching have since went out of business, went into administration, and that qualification is no longer available. But the format that took, in terms of 4 classroom days of training, in-person training, with each kind of day supplemented by assessments that you had to do in between. Take some exercises into the car with your pupils, collect evidence, and then tell us what happens as a result. That basic format is there as the spine of our professional diploma. We've adapted it slightly. We've made it a little bit more challenging, I think, with the addition of a few things, because we wanted to appeal to the market who already had that qualification. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about the assessment methods later on in the video, but again, just in terms of the concept, that I was conscious of not trying to replicate the BTEC 4, but to supplement it. It was still available when I started writing it. I wanted to appeal to new driving instructors. I wanted to appeal to driving instructors who had never done any CPD, but I also wanted to appeal to driving instructors and trainers of driving instructors who had that BTEC Level 4 already, and provide something that would push them and help their development to continue. So that was the basis for the company Bright Coaching, and the impetus for me to go and develop in my coaching skills, get my professional qualification in coaching, and then develop something suitable for the industry. In terms of the credibility of the qualification, I'm obviously in Scotland, so we couldn't do BTECs in Scotland, but we do have SQA, Scottish Qualifications Authority, which is an organisation responsible for almost all of the academic qualifications in high schools and colleges and universities in this part of the world. And finding out what level to pitch that qualification at, so that it was on a similar level as the BTEC Level 4, I was very conscious of the fact that it had to be round about the same level or just slightly over. So in Scotland we have an organisation called the Scottish Credit and Qualifications Framework, and they're the organisation responsible for deciding what level your work sits at. How challenging is it? How many credit points does a candidate get for completing this module of work? So each of the modules has a level, and you kind of pitch it to the organisation, and then they come back with the help of SQA. They come back and they either agree with you that your work is challenging enough to get to that level, or they disagree with you and you say, oh, this is what you need to change to get it there. So we were very fortunate that I went through that part of the process quite quickly. SCQF came back and set it at level 7 on the SCQF, which is equivalent to BTEC level 4 professional award, or level 5, round about there. Kind of standard is very comparable in terms of that. Bright Coaching had to become, it didn't have to become, but I wanted to become an accredited training centre with SQA, so there was a lot of work went into that in terms of making sure that our internal verification processes are valid, that the way we communicate with candidates through candidate induction, levels of support that we're providing as candidates progress through the qualification, how we're assessing it, how we're providing feedback, how we store candidate information, how we deal with things like, suspicion of malpractice. All these kind of things go into, all these policies and procedures have to be in place if you want to become an accredited centre. It's really quite difficult. I found it quite difficult. It was out of my comfort zone as a kind of business person. I found it quite demanding in terms of meeting their criteria. I needed an awful lot of help with the language that was involved. It was very academic language. I don't really have an academic background to speak of. My experience is all in industry, qualifications within the industry. So struggled a fair bit with that, but fair play to SQA. They helped me through the process to make sure that qualification was sound, that it was vetted by industry professionals within the fields of coaching, but also people like Dr. Elizabeth Box was involved with the behavioural change and road safety and driver psychology side of things. So we're extremely grateful to Liz for her help with that, because without her help and input, it wouldn't be the great qualification, in my opinion, that it is just now. Shout out to Dr. Lisa Dorn, whose work we draw on greatly, in particular Better Driving, the DVSA publication. So there's some really good stuff in there about attitudes to sensation seeking in young people. Not just young people, actually, that's the way that we've interpreted it, but attitudes to risk from all drivers. Also things about bias, optimism bias and superiority bias. These are important topics that I think deserve far more attention than they currently receive. So we drew heavily on that, and we've incorporated some work on Module 4 of the qualification that addresses that, gives driving instructors tools to take into their cars and start working with young drivers around this stuff, in the hope that it makes them more rounded individuals, more rounded drivers, with a higher awareness of their own limitations as human beings. Lots of human factor stuff in there as well that I really enjoy working with. But the more I work with, the stronger my feeling becomes that this should not be for driving instructors, this should be for young drivers. And in terms of the modules we have on the qualification, so we have 4 modules. Modules 1 and 2 are heavily coaching based. Module 1, we actually start with the national standards for driver and rider training, as we're trying to lay the groundwork for candidates about why we have this qualification. Why does it exist? What goal, what need is it addressing within the industry? And the argument that I wanted to present at the start of Module 1 was that we have the national standard, and the national standard has certain things in it that driving instructors should be doing. However, there are many of those things that we're not currently assessed on through either Part 1, Part 2 or Part 3, but they're in the national standard. We're all supposed to be able to do them, but the vast majority of driving instructors cannot. Things like adequately work with the role of emotions in driver training with young people. There's no basic training for that, but we should be doing it according to the national standard. Lots of stuff around coaching, references to coaching that are in the national standard that again we're not really assessed on adequately, and because we're not assessed on it adequately, we're not trained on it adequately by the majority of training organisations across the UK. So that's the need that we're trying to address there in terms of that. Module 1 includes some work on the GDE matrix, the goals for driver education. That's the first kind of part of assessment in the qualification. There's an online test for that. And then we kind of quickly move on from there into coaching. So, anyone who knows me knows that I strongly believe that the way forward for driver training and improved road safety in the country is a coaching approach. It's encouraging young people to take responsibility for the learning process in the car, their decision making, setting goals, what kind of driver they want to be, looking after their passengers, and that can only be done really, in my opinion, through coaching and encouraging people to think for themselves. That's what coaching does. Coaching raises levels of responsibility and it raises self-awareness in a way that instruction just cannot. And we can address that argument somewhere else about coaching versus instruction. But to be honest, I think it's a little bit of a tired argument. We do need both coaching skills and instructional skills, but a coaching approach is different. A coaching approach is a mindset and a set of beliefs you have about how people learn. You quite often hear people talk about coaching being a tool in the toolbox. I prefer to think of that as coaching being the toolbox, and instructional skills can be taken out of that box as required, as can coaching skills. And that's up to the instructor, the ADI, to assess situations, decide when to use which. So coaching for Module 1 and Module 2, T-GROW, goal setting for Module 1, but then in Module 2 we go quite a fair bit deeper into challenging limiting beliefs and overcoming obstacles. So it's about helping people to address barriers in their learning. Sometimes talk about runners. If somebody's running a marathon, at some point they're going to hit a wall. How do we get through that wall? So a lot of it's mindset, a lot of it's belief, a lot of it is in road safety or in learning to drive. It can be like a knowledge gap, or it can be a skills gap, or it can be a belief gap. So as coaches, how do we work through that with our clients to the point where they come out of that process a more independent person who's better able to deal with situations like that in the future? So that's modules 1 and 2. And for driving instructors, this is beyond goal setting. So if we think about goal setting and eliciting feedback and reflection as kind of basic coaching methods, then the work around beliefs and values, we do a lot of work on values in Module 2, and overcoming obstacles. This is more advanced. This is stuff that really is by the side of the road, very difficult to do on the move, out of the comfort zone of the vast majority of driving instructors. But we believe at Bright Coaching that this is important work. These are the kind of conversations we need to be having in car with pupils. What kind of drivers they want to be, what kind of language do our learner drivers want people to use about their driving after they pass their test? Because by doing that, we're addressing ideas of self-identity, we're addressing ideas of role models, we're using NLP, and this is what changes behaviour. People change behaviour because of lots of different things, but one of the major reasons is identity and what they want people to think and say about them. So let's use that to our advantage as coaches, and let's bring that kind of stuff into the car. So as I said about the assessments, modules 1 and 2, we've got coaching assessments to complete after module 1 and after module 2. And then in module 3, we take a shift away from coaching and we're really focused on behavioural change techniques. So this is bringing training right up to date, driver instructor training right up to date with very recent research, in particular out of the RAC Foundation, but also kind of well-known behavioural change specialist Fiona Filan, who authored the report on behavioural change techniques, and I think it was around about 2017. And the idea behind this module is that when we train to become driving instructors, we're generally trained in 3 ways of changing people's behaviour. So as driving instructors, our basic training includes telling people how to do things, it involves giving them feedback on how they've done those things, and it involves telling them about the consequences when they get things wrong. That's our basic training, more or less. And the idea behind the module is that we have so many more tools at our disposal in terms of techniques that we can use. We just don't have the training in the industry to provide us and to give us guidance on it. That's a need that Bright Coaching is trying to address by bringing this qualification in. So there are 93 behavioural change techniques. We don't go through them all, don't worry. We do lots of exercises in the classroom, demonstrating how other ones could be used. And then we invite driving instructors to go away and do their research. They coach each other, we put you into triads, you're working with your colleagues a lot. We also invite candidates or encourage candidates to take these new techniques into the car. A very basic one, if a young driver's trying to get to grips with the fact that they keep nudging over the speed limit. They keep getting up to 32, 33, 35 miles an hour, and the instructor's constantly having to nudge them and remind them and resort to those 3 techniques. So come on, slow your speed down, get it to 30, telling them what to do. You're going too fast, giving them feedback, and remind me what the consequences are of speeding down this particular road, dealing with consequences. That there are other things we can do. We can gamify it, we can bring in incentives to improve that behaviour. I was speaking to one of our candidates last night about a behavioural change technique called future punishment, and her candidate decided that if he wasn't able to go through his driving lesson by keeping it to the speed limit, he was going to do the dishes for his mum for a full week. So these are behavioural change techniques that work. They work in all areas of life, whether we're trying to lose weight, or we're trying to get to the gym more, or we're trying to give up smoking, or we're trying to reduce alcohol intake. We can bring all these kind of techniques into the car because they're there. Why shouldn't we be using them? We just haven't had the training on it. Module 3 also introduces the Honest Truth, which is a fantastic road safety organisation. All candidates on the Professional Diploma receive a 1-year subscription to the Honest Truth, and that forms part of your assessment as well. We use something called the WHOOP model, which is around action planning, getting pupils to come up with, if this happens when I'm driving, then I will do this. Again, just really powerful, a little bit like an affirmation, but we get them to work out on their own, again, taking responsibility for post-test driving. And then module 4 is engaging with driver psychology. Now, driver psychology is a huge field. We don't really have time to do justice to the whole field of driver psychology in one qualification, especially in one module of one qualification. So we've kind of had to cherry pick what we feel are the most important things, and we've picked human factors. Why do human beings make mistakes? How do we raise people's awareness of the fact that they have limitations, that we're going to make mistakes all the time. We're incapable of not making mistakes. And the other things involved in module 4 are sensation-seeking tendencies in individuals. So some human beings are more inclined to take risks or more prone to sensation-seeking behaviour than others. And the argument in Lisa Dawn's Better Driving book is that, maybe there's value in knowing how prone to sensation-seeking you are. Maybe there's value in, being able to recognise in other people that they are prone to sensation-seeking behaviour. We also deal with bias, optimism bias, superiority bias, and again, there are ways that we can bring this into the car. There are tools that we give instructors, exercises to do, and then feedback with assessments as well. And then we tie the whole qualification up. Once candidates have been through the 4 modules, they've taken this stuff in the car, they've reflected on it, they've written assignments for us on it. Nothing huge. Assignments are between 400 and 600 words. Not massively academic. I should say on the assignments, nobody's caring about grammar, spelling, anything like that. But it's really important to demonstrate to us that you understand the content that you've been presented with, that you are reflecting on your own experiences, and you're able to identify benefits to the techniques that we're giving you and consequences of not doing these things. And that's generally modules 1, 2, 3 and 4, but we tie it all up at the end with the SAFE system. If you don't know what the SAFE system is, and you're a driving instructor or a learner, I'll pop a link to the SAFE system below, along with a link to Bright Coaching and the diploma, of course. And really it finishes off with just an encouragement to all driving instructors that the way that learning to drive is perceived in this country does not have to be that way. We can change the way that we deliver driving lessons in this country. We can change the way that we teach in terms of how we transfer information, in terms of always talking about consequences and worst case scenarios. It doesn't need to be that way. Learning those communication skills to communicate with pupils, to communicate with parents, is again something that's lacking from our basic training, and that's another thing that we try to address with the qualification. And yeah, finally, the assessment methods. We have online tests, a bit like the theory test that we host on our online system. Nothing as huge as the theory test. I think the longest of the multiple choice tests is maybe 13 or 14 questions. Some of those tests have a final question that you require a longer written answer, and that gets assessed by us. The main body of work, I would say, in terms of assessments would be collecting portfolios of your work. So a very quick example of that would be something like a contracting agreement. So candidates are encouraged to come up with their own contracting agreement that lays the groundwork for a coaching relationship, lays the groundwork for driving lessons that are going to be different from what may be expected. And candidates have to come up with that, submit that to us, but they also have to engage with their pupils in terms of rolling out that learning contract, and they have to collect evidence for us that they've done that, shows that their pupils have accepted it. Another example is TGRO. Candidates have to facilitate goal-setting conversations in the car with the pupils. And how do they do that? They fill out the forums that we give them, and then they submit those to us, and that forms their portfolio. And then the final part of that is after they've collected their portfolios. That's the second method of assessment. So we have online tests, we have portfolios, and then the final part is written assignments, which are generally, justify this or identify 3 benefits of using this method, or write a reflection on what you experienced when you were doing this in your car. So learn about it, do it in the car, come back and tell us what happened. That's kind of generally speaking the process that your assignments and your assessments go through. So in summary, the purpose of the Bright Coaching Professional Diploma is to upskill driving instructors. It's to take our knowledge and skills above that basic training standard that we have all reached at some point and move things on in a way that we can improve road safety, that we can create young drivers with a better skill set, i.e. young drivers who are able to set goals, young drivers who are able to reflect, young drivers who are able to identify their own values and consider their behaviour in line with those values going forward when we are no longer sitting in that passenger seat. To provide driving instructors with some encouragement to address behaviour from a slightly different angle than we've been trained to do so. Do you know, why do people behave in the way they do? Well, do you know, it's not just because they don't know the consequences. Quite often we know the consequences about things inside out, yet we still choose to behave in a certain way. So there has to be more to it than that. One of the key principles or pillars, if you like, is that knowledge and skills are not enough. Just because we know something's wrong doesn't mean we're not going to do it. But giving young people the skills to think about why that is, why do we do it that way, why does life work that way? And again, just upskilling around driver psychology. The amount of research that has come out in the last 20 years around human failure, around how inexperience plays a part in failure, how distraction plays a part in failure. This is stuff that should be really basic training, really day one training for driving instructors. In the first year we put 50 candidates through the Professional Diploma. Many of them are just coming to the end of their assessments now, and we should be posting out the first kind of certificates and the first kind of diploma holders shortly. I'll add a couple of photos to the end of this video, or I'll pop a link in the description below, because that will be quite an exciting moment when that happens. If you've got any questions about the Professional Diploma, please feel free to get in touch via the links below, or you can ask a question in the comments. I do read all the comments and I will answer them, but yeah, just reach out if you're at all interested. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next video.